those who have taken his message to heart and have been inspired into activism because of it. Thank you very much.
All right, now it's time to invite up here the Ambassador Edward Jirigian to introduce the Honorable Madeleine Albright. The ambassador is a very distinguished citizen of Houston, and we have had the pleasure of meeting him many times, those of us who are in the news business, because often we have to go to the Baker Institute to do news stories or get some perspective on stories that are happening around the world. The ambassador is the founding director of the James A. Baker Institute for Public Policy at Rice University. He's also one of the U.S.'s most distinguished diplomats. His career has spanned the administration of 8 U.S. presidents. Remarkable. He is also a leading expert on the very complex political, security, economic, religious, and ethnic issues of the Middle East. He has played key roles in the Arab-Israeli peace process, the U.S.-led coalition against Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait, that was the first war, successful efforts to end the civil war in Lebanon, the release of U.S. hostages in Lebanon, and the establishment of collective and bilateral security arrangements in the Persian Gulf. It is a remarkable resume. Please help me welcome Ambassador Jirigian.
Thank you very much. It's a true pleasure to be here at the Gülen Institute, and a personal pleasure to have been asked to introduce our very distinguished speaker, who is also a personal friend. Madeleine Albright is someone who disarms you. I remember, and I don't know if the Secretary will remember, we were asked to debate each other a few years ago at Texas A&M. We wound up agreeing more. I think the audience was disappointed that it wasn't much of a debate, but a consensus on foreign policy issues. But Madeleine Albright, obviously as the Secretary of State, spoke first and said some very nice things about me. And then she said, now after I've said all these nice things about Ed Jirigian, I'm sure he'll say some nice things about me. And therefore, I'm prepared again to say some nice things about you, Madeleine. Madeleine Albright broke through the glass ceiling, as has been mentioned, in becoming the first woman to be the United States Secretary of State. Condoleezza Rice and now Hillary Clinton have followed her lead. Madeleine, you've really started something. Secretary Albright's first foreign trip, as she likes to call it, was to Texas. In her book, Madam Secretary, she writes that as Secretary of State, she gave her first major foreign policy address outside Washington, D.C., entitled Building a Bipartisan Foreign Policy, in Houston at our Rice University's James A. Baker III Institute for Public Policy. I can't tell you how pleased Secretary Baker and I were that you chose our institute and Rice University to come to make your first major speech. The following day, Secretary Albright writes in a book that she had breakfast at the home of President George Herbert Walker Bush, Bush 41, and his wife, quote, the incomparable Barbara, unquote. Later, she joined former President Bush at a press conference where he strongly endorsed the Chemical Weapons Convention, which his administration had originally negotiated. This was a true reaching out at the beginning of a Democratic administration and endorsing a major initiative of a Republican administration. And what's important about Madeleine Albright, I believe, one of the many things, is that I simply laud her bipartisan approach to foreign policy, which I believe our President-elect Barack Obama has underscored will be a central tenet of his foreign policy approach. Madeleine Albright's CV is long and distinguished, as you can see in your program notes. She is the principal of the Albright Group, a global strategy firm. Dr. Albright is the first Michael and Virginia Mortara Endowed Distinguished Professor in the Practice of Diplomacy at the Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, which happens to be my alma mater. She chairs both the National Democratic Institute for International Affairs and the Pew Global Attitudes Project, and serves as president of the Truman Scholarship Foundation. Dr. Albright co-chairs the UNDP's Commission on Legal Empowerment of the Poor, and she serves on numerous boards. With former Congressman Jim Leach, she recently represented President-elect Obama at the G20 summit in Washington. When she was named in 1997 as the first woman Secretary of State, she became at that time the highest-ranking woman in the history of the United States government. As Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright reinforced our country's alliances, advocated democracy and human rights, and promoted trade and business, labor, and environmental standards abroad. And during the discussion we had before this event here, she underscored again, which I think is one of the most important factors in this very important and complex world we are entering, the underestimated role of religion and culture in policy, and especially in foreign policy. And she has recognized that, and she acted on that, and I hope that the new American administration will take this factor fully into consideration for us to be able to reach out and help resolve some of the most pressing issues of our time. From 1993 to 1997, Dr. Albright served as the U.S. Permanent Representative to the United Nations and as a member of the President's Cabinet. And I've noted, I think we've all noted, President-elect Obama is using this model in his appointment of Susan Rice as our UN ambassador, who will also, I believe, have a rank of cabinet rank. Again, her accomplishments are many. As a new author of a book myself, I have to be honest and say I'm a bit envious of you, Madeleine Albright, because you have been 3 times now on the New York Times bestseller list. I'm far away. But she has written her autobiography, Madam Secretary. A memoir was published in 2003. She published in 2006, The Mighty and the Almighty, Reflections on America, God, and World Affairs, which really does underscore the role of religion and culture in world affairs. And her latest book, Memo to the President, How We Can Restore America's Reputation and Leadership, was published just this year. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the Honorable Madeleine K. Albright to the podium.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you, and I'm on a very tall box here. It is very nice to be introduced by a very good friend, and Ambassador Ed, thank you very much again for your kind words, and I will say a lot of nice things about you. Really, truly, one of our remarkable diplomats who I think did an incredible amount of good for all of us, and so I think that the Baker Institute and Rice in Houston are very lucky to have this very eminent person as part of your great community. Thank you. Very nice to be here with so many friends, Congresswoman. It's very nice of you to be here. Thank you very much for coming. I'm very pleased to participate in this very important luncheon series, and I thank the Gülen Institute and our sponsors for inviting me. And I look forward to our discussion, but what I'm going to use my time at the outset to explain first how I came to think the way I do, and second, to outline the many international challenges America's next president will in fact face. As some of you may know, I was not born in this country. I was born in Czechoslovakia only a few months before Hitler's troops marched into the capital city of Prague. And my father was a Czechoslovak diplomat and a strong supporter of democracy. And so when the Nazis came in, my parents and I fled to England, which is where I spent World War II. Among my first memories are those of gathering in bomb shelters during air raids and singing songs with my British neighbors and waiting for the all-clear sound and then going out and seeing large portions of London destroyed. I was 8 years old when the war ended, and then we returned to Prague, where I hoped very much that I would ultimately fit in. But